Willow Park Church Creekside, thank you for coming to watch this sermon. At Willow Park Church, we are one church across 3 locations in the Okanagan Valley, and our goal for our church is for people to come to know Jesus. If you have questions about Creekside or even our church as a whole, I encourage you to go to willowparkchurch.com to find out more information about us or even to reach out. In the meantime, enjoy the sermon. Hopefully you feel empowered and enriched by it, and hopefully it draws you closer to Jesus.
In 5 weeks, I'm going to be in Guatemala. We're going to be entering Guatemala probably it's about noon our time. So exactly 5 weeks, and I'm going to be with 11 other people. So there's 12 of us heading to Guatemala. Do you want me to just switch, Morley? No? We're good? Okay. I can speak loud. So, in 5 weeks, we arrive in Guatemala. There's 11 of us, 8 students and 4 adults. So those of you who are here, why don't you guys stand up? You guys can see who's going. Yeah, this is a crazy team that I am bringing to Guatemala with me. Awesome. Yeah, so we open it up to grade 11 and 12 students, and then a few parents. So Morley, Carly, and Kim and myself are going, and then we're bringing our kids and a few other youth. So we are excited to be going to Guatemala. I'm going to be sharing a little bit about what we're doing there and why we're going. Really, we're just going to serve in a ministry that's combating poverty, and so I'm going to talk a little bit about that this morning. But stick around afterwards for burritos. Any donations that are made is going to go directly to our group, and so that's super helpful. But if you didn't bring cash, no worries at all. Please just come and hang out. And I would encourage you to talk to these guys. I've been doing some training with them. I've been talking to them about what we're doing and why we're doing this. So I'd love for you to grill them and say, why are you going and what are you doing and what's the purpose of this and how do you do missions well? I really want you to take advantage of putting them on the spot. Okay, so. It's going to be, that'll be good. Okay, Alyssa, come on up here. I'm going to get Alyssa to do the Bible reading this morning. We're going to pick up where Jeremy left off in the book of Mark. So we're going to offer a reflection on Mark, and then we're going to jump into Guatemala. So, yeah.
Hello? I can just speak loudly.
Just speak loud.
Okay. Mark 1:40-45, Jesus cleanses a leper. A leper came to Jesus, imploring him, and kneeling, said to him, "If you will, you can make me clean." Moved with pity, Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him and said to him, "I will, be clean." Immediately the leprosy left him, and he was made clean. And Jesus sternly charged him and sent him away at once, and said to him, "See that you say nothing to anyone, but go, show yourself to the priest, and offer for your cleansing what Moses commanded for a proof to them." But he went out and began to talk freely about it and to spread the news, so that Jesus could no longer openly enter a town, but was out in desolate places, and people were coming to him from every quarter.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so we are working our way through the book of Mark. So this is the last bit of chapter 1. And I'm excited about this passage. When Jeremy told me this is where we're going to be, it just ties in so well with what we're doing in Guatemala. So I'm going to offer a short reflection here on what we just read. Then I'm going to transition over into Guatemala stuff. So several weeks ago, I was listening to one of my favorite podcasts. The podcast is called Jesus Speaks Farsi. And Farsi is a language of the Iranian people. And it's a podcast that interviews Iranians who have had dramatic encounters with Jesus. And it's just an amazing podcast. And it's amazing stories of how God is drawing people, how God is drawing people to himself. Something really stuck with me. The podcaster was interviewing an Iranian man. And the man grew up and he was communist. It was in the 70s when communism was a big thing in Iran. And he was also Muslim because just by tradition, by family, he was Muslim. But he went off to university and he was really bombarded with a lot of different ideas and really trying to understand what is true about the world and how do I know what I should believe. And he met a Christian, and the Christian said, he gave him a Bible, and you're not really allowed to give a Bible there, but he managed to smuggle a Bible to him, and he says, you need to read this. You're going to find the answers that you're looking for. And the guy read the Bible, and he read the Gospels, and he said, it hit him. He's like, I knew that this was the true story. As he read through the Gospels, he says he started crying, and he says, the person that I saw in the Gospels is the person that I want to be like. This is truly God. This is a God who is a God of love, a God of compassion. This is the kind of guy that I want to follow. This must be the Lord. And he was just weeping, and he was telling the story, and it really struck me. about how God reveals himself to us through the scriptures. As we look at Jesus, we see what God is like. And we see the heart of God through the actions of Jesus. This is one of those passages. This is one of those passages that every time I read this, I'm struck by the heart of God. I am struck by how amazing God is and what incredible privilege it is to know him, to love him, and to serve him, and I want to be like him. So let's jump into this. The leper approaches Jesus. That's the scene. The leper approaches Jesus. Let me talk about leprosy in the ancient world. Leprosy is it's considered the worst curse that you could possibly have. It's more than just a disease. It's like a social stigma. If you have leprosy, you are on the outside. So, I'm going to quote from Leviticus. We're getting serious when Leviticus is up there. This is what Leviticus says. If you have leprosy, this is what you're supposed to do. Okay? Anyone with such a defiling disease must wear torn clothes, let their hair be unkempt, cover their lower part of their face, and cry out, unclean, unclean. As long as they have the disease, they must remain unclean. They must live alone. They must live outside of the camp. Can you imagine having a disease, and when somebody would come near you, you would have to say of yourself, unclean. Unclean, you can't come near me because I am unclean. And you have to look disheveled, your hair's got to be out of whack, and you can't wear nice clothes. You got to actually look the part so that people know they can't come near to you. So this is why in the scriptures, whenever we read about lepers, especially in the New Testament, they're always on the outside. You notice Jesus never encounters them in the city. It's because they're not allowed in the city. They're always on the outside in the lonely places, in the outside places. I'm going to quote from the Mishnah, which is an additional commentary on Leviticus. This is what the Mishnah says. So the priests are basically adding to the laws of Leviticus. And they say this: if a leper enters a house, that house is considered unclean, and it needs to go through a ritualistic purity to become clean again. The Mishnah goes so far to say that if there's a leper underneath a tree, and you walk underneath that tree, you are considered unclean because the leper has just been there. That's how stigmatizing leprosy was in that day. Josephus, I've got him up there. Josephus is a Jewish historian. He says this about leprosy. He says, leprosy is in no way differing from a corpse. Numbers 12:12, you'll remember that Moses' sister Miriam got stricken with leprosy, and Aaron said, she's like the living dead. It's like zombie apocalypse. Like if you have leprosy, you may as well be a dead person. That's how bad it was to have leprosy. Lepers were required to stand at a distance of 50 paces away from people. You could not come any closer because of this disease that you had. They were the most ostracized people of society. Not allowed in cities, which means you're not allowed in religious places, which means you're not allowed to participate in the social, communal life of the people of that day, of society that day. Lepers were the ultimate outsider. They are the marginalized of the marginalized. It's hard for us to really understand this because we don't have lepers in our day today, but that's what it was like back then. I know a little bit about this because when I was in India, about 6 years ago, I went and visited a leper colony. We have a ministry there that supports lepers. So this is a leper colony. It's actually a pretty nice colony. It was built by Christians because the Christians there just couldn't stand the thought of lepers living on the streets and having to be outside of society. So they built a really nice area for the lepers to gather. But in India, just like in the ancient world, if you're a leper, you can't be in the city. Everyone is afraid of you. They're afraid that you're going to somehow defile them, and they are not allowed to participate in society. And so went to this leper colony. So there's an orphanage there, and the orphanage primarily takes care of children whose parents are lepers. And so their parents are still alive, but if they chose to live with their parents, they would have absolutely no hope for a future at all. In India, education's free for everyone. Okay, that's the law. But your parents have to go and sign for you when you go to school. So if your dad shows up and he's missing a finger, because most lepers they'll kick him out of the school and your kid doesn't go to school. So these kids don't have a chance of going to school or participating in society at all. And so there's a Christian organization that we support, much like Child of Mine actually, and they care for these children and provide opportunity for them to break the cycles of poverty in their life. And when I was there, it's really cool. They keep the connection with their parents still. So they actually go and visit monthly and get to still have relationship with their parents, which is cool. So I took this picture. So the two kids there, they don't have leprosy. Their parents didn't pass it on to them. They're healthy. But their parents have leprosy. And if you look really closely, you can see missing fingers and missing toes and chunks of their ear and their nose gone, because that's what leprosy does to them. So this is, I have a bit of a sense of what it was like in Jesus' day, because I've seen it in India, and this is still happening in third world countries around the world. There is this incredible stigma and marginalization of lepers. Okay, so in this text, the leper approaches Jesus. I mean, just pause there. That is a huge no-no. Lepers are not allowed to approach healthy people. That's a huge no-no. So he went way out of the social norms to approach Jesus. He took a huge risk in doing what was forbidden of him. Can you imagine how the disciples would have reacted and other people? Here's this outsider, this stigmatized, marginalized, diseased person that by law has to stay 50 paces away from a healthy group. And he, the leper, comes to Jesus. What a radical scene that would have been. It's hard for us to imagine it, but The Chosen does a really good job. So I've got a little 3-minute video here for you of The Chosen and this scene, and they do a phenomenal job here. And what I really want you to see, you're going to see immediately, is how terrified the disciples are, and how they feel about the lepers, in contrast to what Jesus does. I love The Chosen. I think they just capture scenes like that so well. But you can see how terrified the disciples were, and what it meant for the leper to approach that group. So, verse 40, a man with leprosy came to him and he begged him on his knees, "If you are willing, you can make me clean." So what does the leper do? First thing he does is he drops to his knees. This is an act of worship. He acknowledges who Jesus is, and he worships him. So in this same story is in Matthew and in Luke. And in both Matthew and Luke, the leper cries out, he says, "Lord." In Mark, he doesn't actually say it, but in Mark, he drops to his knees, which is really the same posture of saying, "You are the Lord." This is the ultimate act of faith and acknowledgement of who Jesus is. What he says next is really interesting. He says, "If you are willing." You ever thought about that? If you are willing. He doesn't come to Jesus with a demand. He humbly approaches Jesus with respect and with honor. He knows that Jesus can heal him, but he doesn't show up with a sense of entitlement or a sense of, "you must do this for me." He doesn't do that at all. It's this real humble approach. "Lord, if you are willing." A lot can be said about this posture. I think it sheds some light on the arrogance of name it and claim it theology that exists in some circles. They will tell you that if you just believe it enough or proclaim it loud enough, then it must happen. And if it doesn't, there's something wrong with you. Just think that's so dangerous and so unhelpful and not biblical. And I think the posture that this man takes is really the posture we should be taking. If you are willing, God, I know you can. If you are willing, you can make me clean. So that's what he says. You can make me clean. He's confident that Jesus is capable. Lord, you can do it. Which is why the commentary that I was reading says, true faith is the fine combination of respect, if you want to, and confidence, you can. I think that's the way we ought to be approaching Jesus, especially in difficult situations like this, right? Jesus was indignant. I'm going to get center here. Jesus was indignant. He reached out his hand and he touched the man. "I am willing," he said, "be clean." Immediately the leprosy left him and he was cleansed. It's a really interesting word here, the word indignant. It's really hard to translate, which is why if in your Bibles, it's probably got a footnote, and at the bottom of that footnote, it probably says filled with compassion. And Matthew and Luke, they don't have the word indignant, they have the word filled with compassion. But Mark has kept this word. The earliest transcripts that we have use this word indignant, so that's what we're reading. What does it mean? Indignant means that he's angry. Jesus was angry, and you have to ask yourself the question, what is Jesus angry at? Is he angry because the leper has approached him? That the leper has done something that he shouldn't do, and it's going to make Jesus unclean? I don't think so, because what happens afterwards kind of tells us that Jesus is not actually angry with the leper. So why is he angry? I think the answer is he's angry at the situation. He's angry at the injustice and the marginalization of this poor leper. It's like he sees the humanity of the leper and he's angry that this has happened to him. And he's sad. It makes me think of the shortest passage in the scriptures where Jesus wept. What's the situation when Jesus wept? He comes to Lazarus' tomb and everyone is grieving. And it's like Jesus is caught up in this moment that death is a reality and he's sad and he weeps. You see the humanness of Jesus in these moments. So what does he do about it? Well, what he does is, it is audacious what Jesus does, because he reaches out his hand and he touches the leper. He should have yelled at the leper, "Get back! You're going to make me unclean. Go away. Follow the Levitical law, the Mishnah." He doesn't do that. In fact, he embraces him and he touches him. That's such a radical action of Jesus. Imagine what that would have been like for the leper. Here's a man that's probably not had human touch in 20, 30 years, maybe his whole life, because no one can touch him. Can you imagine going through life without ever having been touched? And Jesus puts his hand on him and touches him. Imagine what that would have felt like. This man spent a lifetime believing that he was worthless and that he was an outcast in society, and Jesus touches him and says, "Be clean." The touch of Jesus actually speaks a lot more loudly than his words. It is the ultimate act of love and compassion. It's like this embrace that you are human, you have value, you have dignity. And Jesus says, "Yeah, I'm willing. I'm willing." And immediately he's cleansed. Notice that he's cleansed, he's not healed. Because it's not just about the physical healing, it's about the cleansing of his social status. You know? And so here's the great irony. Jesus should have been deemed unclean by touching the leper. That's what should have happened. He touches the leper, he gets unclean. But instead what happens is the leper is deemed clean by Jesus' touch. The opposite happens. Jesus is so awesome. You know, instead of transferring the disease onto Jesus, Jesus transfers his holiness onto the leper. And that's what he does. That's what he does for us. And he's cured. It's not just physical. He can now participate in society again, which is why Jesus says, go and show yourself to the priest, because that's what's going to allow you to be deemed clean and participate in normal society again. And Jesus has one request, and he says this: please don't tell anybody. Now that's hard. And it's, you know, I would love to say this is a missional sermon and get out there and, you know, preach it up. But Jesus said, please don't, because I don't want the word to get out yet. This is the beginning of the ministry. We're still only in chapter 1 of Mark. So Jesus is like, keep it quiet, because I'm not looking for a big show yet. But unfortunately, the leper doesn't listen to him, and you can hardly blame him. And so let's just read it, verse 43 here. Yeah. Jesus sent him away at once with a strong warning. See that you don't tell this to anyone, but go show yourself to the priest and offer the sacrifice that Moses commanded for your cleansing as a testimony to them. Instead, he went out and began to talk freely, spreading the news. As a result, Jesus could no longer enter a town openly, but stayed outside in lonely places. Yet the people still came to him from everywhere. And so here's another great irony. Jesus was mingling with society, and he met an outsider. And he cured the outsider. And now the outsider is on the inside. And where's Jesus? On the outside. And this is what Jesus does. He trades places with us. Right? And so we see in Mark chapter 1 is actually pointing right to the cross, where he trades places with us. He trades places with the leper, and he trades places with you and with me. What an incredible story. You know, these few verses, we see this amazing picture of what God is like. His heart for the marginalized, his ability to heal and restore, his willingness to go against the social norms in order to show love and compassion, to care for people. I don't know what this does for you, but as I stew on passages like this, I kind of feel like that guy that was talking in the podcast, where he's like, I encounter Jesus when I read the Gospels, and I encounter God. If God is like Jesus, that's the kind of God I want to believe, and that's the kind of God I want to follow. Yeah, this inspires me. Jesus inspires me. I want to be like him. I want to follow him. I want to look like him. I want my life to be marked by him. If this is what God is like, sign me up. This amazing passage, amazing heart of who God is. And so I hope and I pray that you can be inspired by Jesus this morning and maybe leave you with this question. Who's the leper in your circle, in your life? Who are the marginalized or the socially outcast or the suffering or the insecure? They probably don't have a skin disease, but I'm sure there's people that are on the outside looking in. So in your life, where God has called you in your specifics, who's God calling you to reach out to care for, to love the way He loves? So that's just a question I want to leave with you. As we transition into Guatemala, the value of this story really makes me think of what we're doing in Guatemala and the program that we participate in Guatemala. And we keep going back there as a family. So my family's gone back 7 years in a row. That's where we go every November and December. And we just love it. And we join with a program that is local. It's Guatemalan-led, and it is a program that provides a way out of poverty for Mayan teenagers. And so we keep going back because we're seeing results. We're seeing kids discipled. We're seeing poverty eliminated. We're seeing systemic poverty that existed for generations and generations actually eliminated through education and development of Mayan teenagers, and we just love it. And I can't wait to go back there in 5 weeks, and I can't wait to show our students and other people who are coming, and the parents, what the Lord is doing there. So I want to just tell you a little bit about what we're doing and why we're going. So in Guatemala, education and English are the key to getting out of poverty. And so we partner with local Mayan leadership to help educate students. So here's a picture. So, okay, this is, what happened to the other picture? It didn't show up. Okay, that's fine. This is English House. So let me back up. In Guatemala, education is not free after grade 6. And so if you want to keep studying, you need to be able to pay to go to school. If you're poor, you can't go to school. And so these students are poor and they are unable to go to school. They're smart, they're intelligent, they want to eliminate poverty in their families. They just don't have the opportunity to keep studying. And so they win a scholarship. So basically it's a scholarship program so that they can go to school from grade 7 to grade 12, 5 or 6 years. Part of the scholarship program is they're going to school, but then during their 2-month summer break, which is in November and December, they get to come and live with a bunch of crazy Canadians in a program called English House. So English House is where these kids who are going to school throughout the year, they come and live with us full time. We rent out like a big, think of it like a camp setting, and we all live together. And we are teaching them English. We do 5 or 6 hours of English every day. But the whole thing is couched in Christian discipleship. We're starting out with Bible studies and devotions. We're talking about identity. We're talking about self-worth. We're giving them the tools that they need to be good leaders in their communities and to help eliminate poverty in their own, in their lives. So this is a picture in December. So Laura and me and Sydney were there a month ago. And in 5 weeks, I'm taking my older two, Zoe and Caleb. So, okay. And then you might ask, what makes this different than a typical scholarship program? When the kids are done, when they graduate, we don't just say, goodbye, thanks for being here. We really try to help them find the jobs that they need so that they can work well and help their families out of poverty. And so this is a picture of 2 of our students, and they're working for these ladies are working for an organization called Scout Technologies. And so Canadian and American-based companies outsource a lot of their work out of Guatemala. So our kids, once they speak good English, they've already got great work ethic, they got lots of tech skills, they get really good jobs and get to stay in Guatemala and make Canadian-American money, and immediately changing the cycles of poverty in their families because they're confident, because they speak good English, and because they have the skills they need to work well. And because of that, these kids are putting their siblings and their cousins through school. They're helping their families get out of their, impoverished homes. Like, we're actually seeing poverty eliminated because of the education that we're providing to these students. It's amazing. I'm going to go back to this picture. Let me tell you about the cultural context, the world in which these kids grow up in. I told you about the education system. So if you're poor, you just can't go to school. So lots of Mayan families, they're large families. And so if you can only afford, you got like 8 kids, you can only afford to send 2 of them to school, they always choose to send their boys to school because the girls just unfortunately carry less value in that culture. And so you'll look up there at the Mayan students, we have 5 boys and 28 girls. We mostly focus on the girls because they're the ones that need it the most. Okay, so there's already a sense of injustice there. Racism. So they are indigenous Mayan students, and racism runs really deep in Guatemala, unfortunately. Let me just give you an example. There are some fancy malls in the city, and there are guards at the mall, at some of these malls, and they will kick you out if you are Mayan. You're not allowed to go if you're Mayan. So it's for the whiter you are, the better you are. That's what they think there. It's really racist and gross. But this is what the indigenous Mayan kids grow up believing about themselves, because society tells them, like, you're not good enough for that mall. You're not good enough for that place because of the color of your skin. You don't deserve it. So they grow up believing these things about themselves. Our Mayan partners, who are wealthy entrepreneurs, my friends wanted to take them and their kids to a resort, like a pool that was local. So they wanted to just pay for a day pass. And the owner said to the Canadians, we'll let you in, but we're not letting those guys in. They're not welcome here. You imagine the racism that exists in that place because they are Mayan. And so that's what these kids grow up facing every day. So when it comes to job equality, you'll never get chosen over a more Spanish-looking person. That's just a simple reality there. So there's so much that is against them. And then there's the sexism thing, where girls do suffer the most. And for many of these girls, you know, by the time you're 12 or 13 and you've finished your grade 6 and you can't afford to go to school, many of our girls have been forced to go work in the city making tortillas. So you imagine you're 13 years old and your parents have shipped you out to the city basically to be a slave, to make tortillas on the street and send the money back home. That's what a lot of the girls' experience is. And we've had girls come to the program and say, yeah, like my dad told me she wished I was a boy and that I kind of ruined his life. So you imagine like carrying that? And so a lot of these kids come to English House and they're coming in with a real, a lack of identity and a lack of value. There's a real crisis in their lives, and they are suffering. They are the marginalized. They're kind of like the leper of Jesus' day, many of them. And so a lot of what we do in English House, yeah, we teach English, but we start every morning reading the scripture and saying, this is what God says about you, your value, your love, your identity, your purpose, that God doesn't see skin color, that there's equality, and we build them up. And you know, it takes years. We see these same kids. Remember, they start with us in grade 7, and so they come back every year until they graduate. So they're coming in pretty insecure, and by the time they leave, most of those kids are confident. They know who they are. They have value. They love the Lord, and they are ready to get out there and get a proper job and help their family out of poverty because of the value that they have gotten. Okay, I want to introduce you to 4 students. So these are graduate students. It's a little 3-minute video. Just gives you a sense of the kind of kids that we work with. And I just want you to keep in the back of your mind, these were kids who were told they had no value and dignity. And then you can just kind of hear it in their voices now after 6 years of being in the program, the confidence that they carry and the heart that they have for their families and their community.
Yeah, in my first class, we were thinking about our dreams, and my dreams was to keep my siblings out of poverty. And it was like 6 years ago, but I keep that dreams present in my life because like I want to reach my dreams, but also I want that my siblings reach their dreams. I have been learning English for 6 years, and it has been a great opportunity and a big challenge for me because when I started, I didn't know anything in English.
English House has changed my life in many times. It brings me hope because during these 5 years, I have been through many troubles, and some of them are in my home. many people are making fun of me because why are you learning English? It doesn't. You will not have a good job. It's just a waste of time. Some of them are my uncles or friends, and when I stay at the English house, it makes me in family because all of them they are always with me, encourage me.
When I start English house in my first week, it was so great, I think. And of course I had a lot of difficulties, but at my first day, for me it was amazing because everybody tell me how important person I am and how I feel comfortable here, and they make me feel that I belong in a family. I can say that I'm proud of myself because at the beginning of this program, I couldn't tell in front of the people that Sophia have a value.
That make me feel I can keep going with my dream. When I listen to them, I just pray to God or sing different songs that make me feel happy and loved.
As a Mayan girl, I know that I can speak in front to many people and say to another girls that they belong and they can reach more things that they have just in mind. Now I can speak English, and I'm so thankful to God, and I'm so thankful to the program too, because it have changed in my life, and I want to tell more girls that we can do it more.
I will come back to English house because I want to change the life of others like they did with me. I want to teach them how we can look for a better future.
There's our current group. There's 35 of them. Let me just tell you about these four quickly, where they're at. So the first one that you saw was Anna. Anna won a full ride scholarship to the States. She's studying at John Brown University. 4 years, full scholarship, because her English is really good and she's really intelligent. She was 22 when she graduated high school because it took her so long to win a scholarship. So by the time she was in grade 7 and she finally got in, she was like a 16, 17-year-old in grade 7. She just started so late because it took her a while to find someone that would give her a scholarship. Now she's living in the States, getting a 4-year degree, and will come back, will probably get an excellent job and help her family and her community out of poverty. The second one there was Jose, and I hope you picked it up. Jose said, I faced opposition from my family. My uncles and aunts told me, why are you studying English? You don't have any hope of getting out of poverty. You're a Mayan. Stop trying. That's what he faced every day that he went to go and study English. Now he's working for an engineering firm based in Guatemala, making great money and supporting his siblings and his cousins, probably the same family that were making fun of him for trying to learn English, right? Sophia was the third one there. Sophia showed up with a lot of insecurity, and you heard her talk about, I as a Mayan girl, I realize I have value. I have purpose. And she's working for an accounting firm, a Canadian accounting firm, running all of their books, doing a phenomenal job and eliminating poverty in her family. She's got a whole bunch of siblings, and I think she's putting them all through school because of the money that she is making. And the last one there was Andrea, and she's working and she's helping serve with her dad and looking after him and just doing good stuff. So that's just a snapshot. We've got about 30 graduates over the years, and I could tell you stories about most of them and how well they are doing. And so why we keep going back, because we're actually seeing systemic poverty broken in families where it existed for generations. And why do we do this? We do this because we read passages like what we just read, that Jesus cares about the marginalized and the poor, and he cares about people that are on the outside, and he wants them to be brought in, and he wants them to know that they are valued and that they are cared for. And so I'm inspired by Jesus, and I think Jesus calls us to be like him, and he invites us to be like him. And so being a Christian isn't just about what we get out of it. It's about how we're contributing and making the world a better place too, right? It's about how we're participating in the actions of Jesus in the world around us. And so as I reflect on this story on the leper, I'm convinced that God he really cares about people. especially people that are suffering, people that are marginalized. And so it's a real joy for us to be able to keep going back to Guatemala. And I get it, not everyone can go to Guatemala. That would be unrealistic. But, God's put us all in circles. He's given us all opportunities to look and love like Jesus. And so I think I would want to just leave you with the question and the challenge. Who's God calling you to love and to be Jesus in their life? I'm going to be there in 5 weeks and excited to show our students and some of our parents what we're doing. So what we're doing, we're going to go and just hang out with these kids. We're going to teach English probably 2 or 3 hours a day. Just keep building on the program that has been running for many years. And just by showing up, we're speaking value into these kids. When they see us there, they're like, wow, you came all the way from Canada just to come and hang out with us? And that alone speaks value to them, like just showing up. I know lots of people say, I've got nothing to offer. Getting on the plane and showing up is what you're offering. And everything else is a bonus. So it's super cool that we get to do this, and I'm excited. And I'm really grateful for the generosity of our church. You guys have been so supportive, and happy for that. Thank you for that. So make sure you grill some of our team on why they're going and what they're doing at lunchtime, okay? I'm going to invite the worship team to come up, and let me pray as we close here. Father, I thank you so much for your goodness and your love. And Lord Jesus, as we reflect on this passage, we are just reminded at how awesome you are, that you are a God who loves and who is compassionate, a God who welcomes the outsider and cares for the marginalized.